Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Sound Engraver's stream. I'm, of course, Sound Engraver. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. That you've had a good weekend. We've had a week of some snow. Obviously, not a lot of snow compared to the rest of the country or most of the country, but we've had a few inches, and there's still snow sticking to the ground. So it's officially winter. We can say that it is winter over here. Let me go ahead and just make sure the banner is. That was my track primitive supposition that you can find on my website if you would like to. I think my single tracks are not more than $1. So if you like that track, actually, I'm sorry, primitive supposition is part of a 2-track EP called River Sprint. And that is, I think, $1 or $2 on my website, soundengraver.com, if you are interested. Let's go ahead and hide that. And let's put me on the camera. First, let me get to the comments, then put me on camera. All right. Hopefully everything sounds good. Coming in through, my wonderful husband says loud and clear.
Are you on the right Wi-Fi?
Am I on the right Wi-Fi?
Are you on the right Wi-Fi?
Let's double check. Hold on one second. Let me put the camera off. And let me check. Actually, I'm going to mute myself too, real quick, just to see if I'm on the right Wi-Fi. Well, I think I am on the right Wi-Fi because let me say that again. Right Wi-Fi. Yes, I am on the right Wi-Fi. So if there is some stuttering, both Prof and I have had a little bit of stuttering on our streams from our own devices. One device is off. This one, I could probably just turn this off. I'm going to be a professional and put this on airplane mode. All right. Let me do that real quick. I don't want to do it just in case something comes up. No, that's okay. Never mind. That's the right thing to do. Probably. Or maybe that's the boomer thing to do. We'll see. So anyway, thank you, my wonderful, handsome Prof, for coming into the room and letting me know. So anyway, if just let me know if the video freezes a lot, I'll go back to camera or switch off the camera, and we should be good to go. Lynn Green, we'll start the chat with saying hello to Lynn Green. You will be here tomorrow listening to my stream tomorrow morning. So thank you for wishing me a good stream. Good to see you. Hopefully you have a good rest of your weekend before tomorrow. Ghost Planet Max Inc. 1.0 is in. Thank you for stopping by. We've got Final Fantasy Fan 12, I'm going to say. We've got, I forgot how to pronounce that planet. That's so sad because I'm a sci-fi reader. Uranus? I don't know how to pronounce that. I forgot how to pronounce that planet. That has a long, long time since I've heard that name. So I'm just going to call you Bishop for now. Bishop of our solar system. Why couldn't you have done a planet like Neptune or something? Can't do Pluto. Pluto, I know a lot of people my age and older, they want Pluto to be a planet. But I never, even as a kid, I never felt right that Pluto was a planet. I always wanted to end with Neptune because if you see like the sequence of planets, Neptune is big. It has kind of a completed look to the line of planets. But anyway, Bishop, welcome. Nice to see you. And actually, let me see your avatar real quick. Very nice looking avatar. That looks pretty cool. That looks pretty cool. It looks like an art piece. Thank you, Gigawatt, for calling my music, saying my music reminds you of Donkey Kong. That's a perfect compliment. Donkey Kong really was David Wise was pretty much one of the first major influences of my composition. I sort of always knew I wanted to compose, and I was very much influenced by his soundtracks from all DKC soundtracks, including Eveline Fisher. All right. We've got Junk. Junk. Good afternoon. How purist are you as a Scooby-Doo fan? Oh, I'm kind of purist, and I accept that. And I accept why Scooby-Doo is so popular. I mean, I'm not. I'm not that. I'm not too much of a purist. I haven't seen any of the new Scooby-Doo that went back to the old outfits and stuff like that. Maybe one episode with Prof, but that's pretty much it. But I just like the Hanna-Barbera stuff. I like okay, so Scooby-Doo, it's warranted that Scooby-Doo should involve the speculative and the paranormal. That's fine, I accept it. I've always preferred it's a preference, it's not an objective thing. I've always preferred Scooby-Doo just to have the man behind the mask, but that's just me. I've seen the Scooby-Doo movies, and actually, I grew up with Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf, The Ghoul School, I think that was another movie. So I grew up with some of the movies, that involved the speculative that I also liked too, so anyway, I dig it Outlies in, welcome, good to have you. Studio Super is also in, howdy, good to have you come in, sir. Spidey Rules, thank you for coming in too. You say no. I'm glad you brought this up. Is the art trap where when the twins swap their parents' art without them knowing? Yeah, that's exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up because I kind of titled the stream "The Art Trap," and it made me think of the movie The Parent Trap, and like okay, so that's a good enough title if it kind of rings a bell if it kind of sounds like it should sound. You know, that's good. That is good. All right. The Scooby-Doo films, the live action films, I'm not a particular fan of. So when I say movies, I like the animated movies, like the late '90s, early aughts. Those were fine. I also loved. I think my favorite Scooby-Doo movies actually were the Hanna-Barbera Celebrity Guests. I loved those so much. Those were great. All right, so that is. It looks like that is in from the chat. So um, no mention of me freezing, so I'll just, continue. Let me grab some water. I need to tell you this, guys, before I start my topic. So it was not planned, into the new year. This was not a New Year's resolution. This is just I'm very sensitive to like, I'm very in tune, shall we say, with how I feel, how my body feels with things like nutrition and getting fresh air and stuff like that. And I think a couple weeks ago, I just after the new year, I was like, I just feel blah, you know, I feel like pinched in, like I'm like tight and tense and stuff like that. And I've come to the conclusion, I think it is a conclusion, this educated guess that I've been drinking way too much coffee in the past few years. And because I actually got for a wedding gift, we got this beautiful coffee pot, no coffee maker, and it makes 14 cups, and I can barely make it to 5 or 6 cups before I'm like, well, I'm the only one that drinks this kind of coffee, just drip coffee. So I don't like we're not part of a large family. We aren't in a family of coffee drinkers per se. And so I realized as wonderful as the gift was, it's just it's making too much coffee for me. So I was kind of feeling a little ugh. And so I decided, well, maybe it's just coffee all around. So I decided, I don't know if you guys ever saw this on your YouTube ad. If you don't have YouTube Premium, sometimes you see ads. And I've been having ads on mud water. If you've ever heard of mud water, and it's based out in California, and it's basically all these ingredients that is supposed to be the alternative to coffee. And I will have you know it does taste like mud. Like, so back in the 1940s and 50s, like, people would say, "Hey, I need a cup of mud." Like the diners and the malt shops and stuff like that. "Give me 1 cup of mud," when they would talk about coffee, and then this is mud water. And, I finally got a shipment in of mud water for a month, but I need to cancel it because I can't do anything. I can't do much of anything to make it taste even okay. And I'm not feeling any much better after the switch, so long story short, I've decided just to drink maybe 1 cup of coffee a day, not like 3 or 4 to feel better, so that was my resolution of it all. So, if you need to switch coffee, you probably just should just drink less coffee and then just switch it to a different caffeine like tea or something like that, yeah, anyway, I don't know why I said all that, and that's probably not as interesting. Hello, Femunition. Hello, twin. Yes. Hello, twin. Femunition. I like that. Yeah. Welcome. Oh yeah. Well, what are you doing listening to my stream? You're supposed to have a birthday with someone very important to us. Give them a piece of cake. Are you guys listening to, my stream all together? That's cool. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about art. We're gonna be talking about art. Can I see your pop-up? I wanna see your pop-up. Did you get that from where you are, from your state, or did you get it from here? That's pretty. That is very, very pretty. Femunition is great. Uh, very, very important person. um, D. Pensac is in, and I think that's everyone new. So, okay, let's get started with the topic. Um, Final Fantasy fan says alternative to coffee, milk, ideally whole milk. I like black coffee, like really good black coffee. It's just it that with some eggs for breakfast. It's just that's the other thing about mud water. It's not a cultural replacement. Like it tastes like mud. It doesn't taste right, and it doesn't taste good with your breakfast. So it's like and they kind of spin their ads like saying we are the new coffee choice. It's like no, we coffee has been a cultural thing for centuries upon centuries. You're not gonna take over coffee. People are gonna still drink coffee for the rest of their lives. But I appreciate the sentiment. Like you want people to be healthier, so I do appreciate that. Okay, so let's actually talk about art for a second. So, it's kind of funny. Like, Prof was talking about YouTubers wanting to, put something trendy, something that's happening on YouTube for their thumbnail to get more views and stuff like that. And for me, I just posted Marvel's Echo. The show that just finished. I never watched it. Never. I have not seen any Marvel shows uh, since. Well, I've only seen Agents of Shield, so that's the only Marvel show I probably will ever watch. But there's a little bit of a connection with putting up Echo. I'm not going to be talking about Echo at all, actually, except I will talk about an article that RJ talked about, and this has to do with the topic of things being deep in art. So, if something is more complicated, is if something is more complex in the program of your art piece, it is better. It is objectively better. Because it's deeper. It's deeper. And that's actually not always false, but it's not always true. You can have very complex ideas and set up a formula for your art piece. It could be film, it could be a story, it could be music. And we'll talk about music just a little bit since I am a musician and a composer. But going back to Echo, RJ from the Fourth Age was talking about this article he had read. He spent the video this last Saturday. He posted his weekend video, and he posted this video on a writer, an article piece about pretty much the producers and the actress who plays Echo. I don't know the character's name. Sorry. Basically saying, you know, she's we're not trying to make basically the sentiment is we're not trying to make her a hero like Captain America. And what that essentially means from the writer of the article and then also the producers behind Echo and the actress behind Echo, they're basically saying we don't want a pure good versus evil. We don't want just black and white. We don't want simple good, simple evil. She's a very complicated character. Yeah, she does bad things, but she has to sometimes do those really bad things in the show to protect her family and make sure they're okay. And all she wants at the end is a Sunday dinner with her family. She's not simple like Captain America, who's just pure, who's just good. She has to be complicated. And this sentiment is trying to bolster this idea that because she's a complicated character, therefore she's a deeper, more meaningful character. And this type of, I wouldn't call it a fallacy, it's just a sentiment. This sentiment that the art is better because it's more complicated is actually uh, a misconception. I'll call it a misconception. And I saw this all the time in the academic space with the universities. So, with my own experience in music, there would be, especially in the 20th century. So, just to give you a little bit of a background, hi, Big Al. Good to see you here to listen. Hope everyone is doing well. Hopefully you're doing well too, Big Al. Great to have you. Um, just speaking from experience in the college, because I had like, uh, gosh, what was it? It was like 8 years of education, 8 years of education in the higher education in the liberal arts. And this sentiment about the art being complicated makes it better, makes it more meaningful. Maybe not. Maybe it only makes it more impactful in like a small group of like a room of people. Like maybe 12 people have been touched by this deeply appreciating this deep art and stuff. Like, oh, that was really good. Um, the sentiment by professors, by composers in residence, by composers living in the city and stuff like that. There was this push for students in the composition department to listen to pretty much strictly 20th century music. Now, what does that mean? 20th century music. Just to give you a little music history in a nutshell, 20th century music, especially like right at the cusp of World War One, but definitely after World War One. Right at that time, like 1920s, we're gonna say 1910s, 1920s, but definitely into the 1920s. Um, composers, both from the academics and then also from the concert hall, they broke away from convention pretty dramatically because of something as severe and drastic as world war. And they broke away from things like traditional harmony, traditional melody, the way to use instrumentation and orchestration for the orchestra. They broke away from the constant use of consonance versus dissonance, and they molded it in a style called, well, it first started with neoclassicism, so breaking away from classical form, convention in traditional harmony and structure and all of that. So neoclassicism. A good example of this, and I would say he's a great composer. I'm not knocking him, and that was Stravinsky. Another composer is Arnold Schoenberg. He's also a very good composer. Schoenberg actually even went beyond neoclassicism and decided to not even work with relational things like, oh, this is a beautiful major third, this is a minor sixth. It's all technical stuff, but you'd actually, even as a listener of pop music, you would recognize what these relationships are. They're very consonant. They're very tonal. They're very beautiful. They're very uplifting. They sound good. Certain intervals in relationship to one another in a construct of a melody sounds good. There's no denying that. And Schoenberg broke away from that just momentarily. He went back to neoclassicism after his 12 tone structure. But basically 12 tone is 12 tone, the 12 chromatic pitches within the octave having no relationship with one another. Like all the playing field has been leveled. There's nothing more important than the other. It's all equal. And therefore, in some cases, especially to the not so frequent listener, this could sound random if you're not used to such harsh dissonance. Basically, when pitches are all equal and in relationship to one another, your ear is hearing random pitches. You're not there's nothing that you can settle on. There's no centricity that you're thinking, oh, that's a C minor chord, so the whole song should be kind of wrapped around this C minor chord. That was done away with, especially 12 tone serialism. And then getting further down into the Great Depression, and getting especially into the 1950s and 60s, that was even further deviated. 12 tone didn't really become a thing after that. I mean, they still worked with it. Composers still worked with that. But then someone like Pierre Boulez would work with integral serialism or post serialism, where it wasn't just pitches that were completely equal. It was the use of dynamics. It was the use of note value, note length. It was the use of all the parameters of music that makes music. And it was fixed in a system. And then that sounded even more haphazard and more chance-like. And then you would work, getting into the 1970s, you would work with spectral music, or working with orchestration and pitch values and pitch relationships that have to do with the overtone series or the harmonic series. Basically, what partials in a note that a clarinet rings out. Like, okay, you got the main fundamental note, and then what are the partials that construct that specific clarinet sound or that specific piano sound? And I will say some of the music is really beautiful. Like okay, that's cool. But it's not so much music for music's sake. It's the system behind the music. That's what's most important. For a lot of the movements, a lot of the musical movements in the 20th century, the serialism, the post-serialism, the spectral music, maybe even some minimalism, computer music, how a computer is working in the 1960s and stuff like that. A lot of it was programmatically based on systems, not ideas, not concepts, not artistic things like story. It was based on mathematical systems and computer systems and even systems involving chance and indeterminacy. What's my whole point of that? Well, students, composition students are very much encouraged to pursue those systems even at the cost of the music itself. Now, I'm not going to say the 20th century composers like Schoenberg and all these wonderful people like Stravinsky and even Pierre Boulez, even Xenakis and all those people. And I'll give you some recommendations in the future if you want. I'm not saying they composed terrible music or there was I'm not saying even with their rigid systems there was no musicality and there was no expression. There was, especially. I'm not saying it was without it being musical, but being expressive, being artistically expressive came second to the system. And because of that, and because of that push for composition students in the university system to pursue those ideas, you start generating in your mind as a student saying, "Oh, well, the 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 music is better when the system is better." Or the music is better when it's more complicated. So I'm coming from a purely academic experience that people do believe in those spheres, people do believe that it's better when it's more mathematical. It's better when it's more systematic, when there's a lot of theory behind it. Now, I love music theory, but I won't compose a piece based on theoretical structures of harmony, for instance. I'm going to be very intuitive with my composition. I'm going to be very intuitive with my composition. And then if you want an analysis of my composition, like what chords I'm working with and stuff, then I would give it to you. But I don't put the system first. The analysis comes later. And I think that's actually a really healthy way of composing music. Thank you, Studio Super, for the super chat. I'll get back to you very soon. I just wanted to finish this thought. So, coming from a musician's perspective or a composer's perspective, that academic notion that it has to be theorized, you have to write a scholarly journal about the deep mathematical analysis of a piece. That's what makes it a better piece of music. Not so much, hey, is it music? Is it good music? Because some of these composers, as monumental as they are in the 20th century, some of these composers would compose 20, 30-minute long pieces of music that actually has no dynamic shift in motion, no expression, very limited structure, or too much structure if it's going to the extreme. And so that goes back to, the sentiment behind Marvel or Disney or whatever the popular franchise is like, "Oh, well, she's not really a villain. She's not Captain America. She's a lot of shades of gray." Because, a lot of shades of gray, that's more complicated. And because it's more complicated, it's more interesting. And so that's the problem. That's the problem. Sometimes complication in something works. Something complex can really beautify a piece of art. But when it's that like myopic perspective saying, "No, black and white, strictly good versus evil in stories, for instance, that's not interesting enough. I was like, there are many interesting stories where it's black and white, night and day. It's up to you as the writer or the artist to make that concept interesting. So that is what I have to say. Might continue um, talking about it further, but let's go ahead and go continue on with the chat. Studio Super, so thank you so much. You say for $9.99, the idea of muddying good and evil to where it's relative can lead to the problem of not being able to take sides because it's both sides doing it wrong, and you can't give a carb. I can say that, right? I don't even know if that's a bad word. 1 second. I'm saying it how you wrote it. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I wanted to talk about that in the way of writing. So we're talking about music from the academic sense, but we're gonna shift it to writing. You guys would be really surprised when you have even somewhat of a following on YouTube, somewhat of a presence, and you say something, you give a critique of something, especially something that is very popular. You would be surprised at some of the comments you receive. And since my phone is at hand, I'll see if I can find the comment. I'm not going to give off who it is or where the comments come from. Um, but the as you say, Studio Super, the muddying, the blurring of evil and good, and where there's no distinctive line, where it is wrong to call someone a hero when they do villainous acts. If you do bad things, you're not a hero. As we hear from Plato and all the um, philosophers of that time, a hero has those cardinal virtues. Virtues, things that are good, virtues versus vices. If you pursue virtue, you're a hero or you're acting heroically. If you pursue vice or sin, you are not a hero. You are, and I know it sounds strong and people don't like this, but you are not acting in accordance with the good, whether it's the supreme good that is God or the good as people stand it to be. Now, of course, you guys know I'm religious, so there are a higher order of things in my perspective, but even people who do not pursue religion and do not have faith in any one God, they can understand what is morally right and morally uh or I would say what is not right, what is unjust. And people I had a couple streams back, I was complaining about a writer, a particular sci-fi writer who is setting up this protagonist as a hero when he's not a hero. And a lot of people came at me saying, "You, well, basically, a few people said you can't. There's no such thing as a pure hero. There's no such thing as someone who is purely good. You to put someone who is purely good in a story is an impossible task. This is what I've been getting with the comment section. Like even with fiction, I'm not even talking about faith and religion and like the purity of Christ, for instance. Even in fiction, people in the real world believe you can't even put a pure character, like a pure-hearted character, in a body of fiction. They can't believe that because they've been so inundated with different media, different novels that are painting people. How do I want to say painting people in a different way? People are flat out saying in their writing, saying this is a hero when they're behaving like a villain, or this is a villain, but she's really a hero. And so when you muddy up that language, people actually say to you, saying it's impossible to have a good-hearted hero because life is complicated. And so there's this antipathy toward people who are not complicated people, who are black and white with things, night and day with things. They're saying this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is evil, and people can't even stand that in fiction. Am I saying art with very morally gray protagonists can't be objectively good? No. You can have very good writing with very non-heroic characters. One pr prime one prime example of a very well-written story that involves a not so heroic character is 1984. It's a very, very well-told story, and it's pretty much the seminal piece of science fiction if you ever start science fiction, and it's dark, it's very dark, and it's very sad and very morbid, and there's very little good in that book, um, but it's also structurally done very well. It's a wonderfully told tale. So people are also coming at me for saying, "Well, you just like heroes and stories, and maybe you prefer heroes, and that's why you're saying it's objectively good art versus um, anti-heroes, and maybe you're thinking anti-hero protagonists can't be in good art, and that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that at all. Yes, I have a preference. I do want people to I would prefer stories with one or two characters in the cast of characters to be morally upright. Um, and so that's the real problem where people say, well, if you the the people behind Echo, they also talk about this character, Echo. I think that's her name. I don't know. Is that her name? You know. Basically, they talk about her trying to be a hero and do bad things, like trying to be heroic with her family and do bad things as a balance of good and evil. It's like that's not how good and evil work. They don't. You can't. It's not good for you to be balanced between good and evil. Like how does that work? Like even quantitatively speaking, like like in a day, are you gonna do 5 good things and then like, oh, I forgot to do 5 bad things. Okay, I'm gonna do 5 good things to people one day, and then to the next day I'm gonna actually have to kind of balance that, equalize that, and say, well, I've got to do 5 bad things to people now. It's like that's stupid. Oh no, there's a balance. She has a balance of good and evil. It's like, no, like it doesn't work like that. If she's being ruthless and mean and evil, she's evil. She's not a hero. If she pursues virtue, she's a hero. And it kind of sounds weird, like we have to, like in a way, you almost with some people, you have to talk to them like they're 5 years old, like you're giving them a moral lesson because they truly don't believe in such simple notions. And there's a beauty in simplicity. There's a beauty in simplicity. Prof, why is Alexa having Prof's Alexa is having a fit right now because I'm probably on my prof's computer speakers and I've been saying the show's name. Sorry. Yeah, probably should be careful about that. Sorry. Sorry, Alexa. Spider Rule says, Sonograver, whatever happened to less is more? So here's what I also want to say. This and actually, Spidey Rules, with your comment, you reminded me of something. As an artist, it's good to start from something that is not complicated. And you might, for you artists out there, or you listening on the replay, you might understand this with your own work. When you start with something simple, you're working within those limitations. For any art piece, for any medium, start with a few parameters. Like if you're just starting from scratch a new project, and maybe you don't have an idea, or maybe you do have an idea, but work with very few parameters, work with some limitations. And when you work with few parameters, you'd be surprised how much you can generate with those few parameters. I was actually, to be fair, with the university system, I was taught to compose that way too. You know, they gave me some exercises like you're not going to work with more than these parameters. And it's a challenge, and it's a very good challenge. You want to work with simplicity and say, okay, let's see how much I can get out of these limitations. And for me as a composer, I don't work with anything complicated in my compositions until the structure is done. If the structure's not done, if it's not completed, I'm not bothering with complex sounds and experimentation. I love experimentation. And hopefully you'll hear that in the coming months when I release more original music. but I don't really work with experimentation except for at the very beginning when I need something going and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that works." And then after that, after I have an idea of what the piece is gonna sound like, after that first moment, I don't work with any experimentation until the structure is done. Because music, as with story, is structure. It has to have structure. And it should more or less be not simple in structure, but palatable for your listener. So, all right. Jung says, I already believe, I have always believed in Jiro's sushi critic who stated that perfection is simplicity itself. Yeah, and a lot of people have a lot of people want to be messy with their art, and I think that's fine in terms of experimentation, but the final result should have something concrete. And and I think something very simple can be, dare I say, perfect. Um, a lot by the way, a lot of people don't like the word perfect. I had a video just this last week. Not many people I had the feeling that it wasn't gonna get a lot of views because I just know that people just don't prefer it. But I talked about people having a real hard time with the word perfect. Not hard time, I'm sorry. They they would they have a hard time with high standards. So, you guys out there, if you have any online presence, whether on YouTube or on some other social media platform and you have high standards on things like art, people will come at you and saying, "Well, not everything's perfect. Why do you have such high standards?" Like, I do. It's okay. I'm me. You don't have to have high standards. I'm not forcing you to have high standards. I just have high standards. The bishop says, "Do you like, Arvo Part or Pear?" Ah, gosh, man, it's been a long time since I've even said these composer names out. Arvo Pear, I think is how you pronounce his name. From what I have heard of his, both in the academics and then just by myself, I do enjoy his stuff, but it's been a long time since I've listened to his stuff. Thinking of another composer too, 20th century. Yeah, a lot of these 20th century composers actually do have a lot of seminal pieces, even though they're very different and they deviate from convention. I would say though my my complaint with people pushing their own expression, modeled after these great composers of the 20th century. They try to like imitate them and it just starts sounding the same. And there's actually it's a movement. If you guys are not aware, it is called if it's still called this, but it's been called this for decades now, new music. So when you hear new music or new contemporary music, it's basically chamber ensembles, orchestras from all around the world that play these commissioned pieces by living composers. And a lot of the stuff, not all of it, but a lot of it will sound the same because they're working with systems that aren't in congruence with traditional thematic ideas, traditional melody, harmony, orchestration, and all that. And when that happens, it's not that things continuously sound bad per se, it just sounds random. You won't remember it. Like, oh, that was such a wonderful new music piece. And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to remember what that sounds like in, you know, 10 weeks from now. Someone like George Crumb, though, he had a signature. Helmut Lachenmann, he also had a signature. Morton Subotnick, John Chowning in the computer space, they had their own signature in the 1970s and stuff. I know what their music sounds like. I remember what their music sounds like because that's their signature. But if you're asking me as an electronic music composer to compose like John Chowning, I'm like, why do I want to sound like John Chowning? Like that's his own signature. He's great for what he did at the time, and I've met him in person. He's a humble man, a very nice guy. His wife, I think, is I don't think she's an opera singer per se, but she's classically trained, and he's done very interesting music with computer music. But I don't need to sound like him, and I think a lot of people kind of go like, "Oh, I gotta take from John Chowning and try to make my computer music sound just like him," or something like that. That might be an exaggeration, but a lot of composition students fall for that. Like, oh, I gotta sound like Lachenmann. I tried when I was a composition student. I tried sounding like Lachenmann. I tried sounding like Chelsea and Sariaho and stuff like that. All these people who have their own signatures. But, like, I've had professors who would try to sound like those composers. I had a my first composition professor, he got an award called, I think, the Kaya Sarajevo. I think she just recently passed. Oh gosh, I think she was Finnish. I don't remember these facts after 10 or 12 years of not being in the university. She had a signature in her new music. New music, that's the term. And, I remember my first composition professor, no joke, his first name is Huckleberry, and he hates that. Yeah, but he very much imitated that kinda style, and his music is kind of dynamic, but it's kinda samey. It's kinda samey with all the other professors and composition students. It's like, you guys are okay with your composition, but you don't have your own signature because they prefer things complicated versus things musical. I would say this to any composer, like, whether you're in the school system, if you're in the university, or if you're just self-taught, have your own signature. Forever, I wanted to sound like the Ultimate record, composers, electronic composers. I love their music, or I love them, especially, 5 or so years ago. I wanted to sound like them, but then I started just working the more you practice, the more you develop your own signature, and I don't sound like them. I'd like to their down-tempo music, their ambient down-tempo music, they're great. Ultimate Records is their name. A lot of different, artists of that label, and, I love down-tempo. I still listen to down-tempo, and I'd like to see if I can compose a down-tempo piece, and I started a sketch, a couple months back. I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like down-tempo," but I'm not strictly down-tempo. I'm not strictly ambient. Sometimes I'm uplifting, I have beats. Sometimes I will do synthwave, not because I have to do synthwave. I have ideas that, like, "Yeah, that sounds like synthwave." But hopefully it still carries that, sound engraver signature. I think my wonderful person, uh Craig W is here. Welcome. The character's name is Mia Lopez. Okay, sounds good. Sono F Sanaf Sanafkung? Sanafkong? Sono F Kong? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. What are you saying then? I don't know. A Final Fantasy fan says, "Apparently it's taboo to talk about absolute right and wrong, responsibility even, or responsibly even concerning God." I mean, you can that's the thing is, like, I've heard atheists talk about God in a very just just a natural way. I mean, even a lot of Christians, they're like, "Oh, well, I don't know how to talk about God with talking with being weird." It's like, if it's an integral part of you, just as, philosophy or atheism is a part of someone else, it should be natural to talk about. And if people balk at that idea, if they kinda give you a wide berth, then as long as you're decent about it, as long as you're not mean-spirited about it, it's fine. But truth on its own can be very, very strict. My wonderful person she's my twin, okay, I'll just say that. My twin Feminution says, "Yes, your memorial was clearly influenced by the Snow Barrel Blast DKC1 and Mining Melancholy DKC2." I think that's actually DKC2, I think that would be true. The bell tones that I put in that track, my track Immemorial, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I can hear, also the Snow Barrel Blast from the first game. Huge influence, like, David Wise, it was such an honor to meet him. I had an online interview with him with another channel a few years ago now, but he's very nice guy. I remember saying something, he gave me some critique for my piece, and then I said, "Oh, I see, you mean this," and, like, I saw his face light up, and he's like, "Yes, exactly." I'm like, "Ah, he connected." The composer of Donkey Kong connected with me for, like, 2 seconds online. It's out there. It's out there on YouTube to see. It's great. I should probably review that. Um, Oh, okay, actually, you know what? I will say this, so I'm gonna call you Sono, if that's okay, because I don't wanna mispronounce your name. You say complexity is only refreshing, simple will stay around forever. I think that's good, and actually, when I say complicated, I actually don't mean complex, because something can be very complex and beautifully complex. Complicated signifies a lot of stuff, and it doesn't need to be structural. Some people complication is just a matter of a lot of different factors, a lot of different variants that may or may not connect with one another. Complicated has, I would say, a lot more. I would say it has a negative connotation. Complex does not. Like for instance, my science fiction world will be it will be complex with different stories and stuff. Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth, a lot of like, especially with things like the anthropologies and the tales involving the First Age and Silmarillion, that's really complex. But there's a synthesis of it, a synthesis, bridging the First Age, the Second Age, and then the Third Age with the main events of Lord of the Rings. So, um, I mean, so complex. I hope this stream doesn't come off as I'm digging. I'm taking a shot at something that is complex. Complicated is when you're trying to muddy up things with so many different elements that really are not aligned with one another. For instance, language. I'm going to repeat my point. You can't call something that is not. Like the one example I'll use out of Star Wars, recent Star Wars, is Bo-Katan or Bo-Katan. People forgot that she was a domestic terrorist or a clan terrorist. And then now she's the hero in the Mandalorian verse or Mandoverse. Where was the growth? There was no growth. We never saw any growth. We never actually saw a trajectory, a complete line from one point to the next point between Bo-Katan. And everyone's like, oh yeah, she's a hero. It's like she never grew to be a hero. She's a bad person in a few episodes, and then she's supposed to be the leader of Mandalore. No. It's like, well, it's complicated. It's just we don't have to discuss it. It's complicated. Anyway, let's continue. Oh, thank you, Studio Super, again for your other super chat. Our show Echo is so many things. Oh, this is in quotes. Okay, our show Alexa is so many things. It's complicated, and that's good. My response, aka, you don't know what you're doing. Look at the fiction we get look at the fiction we get when we forsake purity. Directionless characters. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, and again, I'm not okay. I gotta be clear. I am not against a villain who struggles with moral quandaries. But it's by their actions to decide if they're staying a villain or if they're trying to get better. I'm not against a hero with moral quandaries, like a hero who really questions if something is good or not. I'm not against that either. It doesn't always have to be black and white, but there should be definition. Always be definition. In my stories, I will have characters who walk that line, between good and bad. I will have characters who are always good. I will have characters who are always bad. I will have characters who will, vacillate back and forth and have to grow deeply out of that in their arc because of their constant I'm a good character, and then you do a really bad thing, and then okay, you're not gonna go unpunished for that. Like you're gonna have a lot of spiritual work and a lot of heartache and a lot of pain because you chose that route. You started good and then you started following vice or a bad pursuit of something. Well, you're gonna come back to the side of good, but not without a whole lot of pain. That's fine too. That's fine too. So, I mean, Brian Gilmartin says, "Life is complicated," said every scumbag ever, sound engraver. Well, have you ever okay, so I'm not on Facebook, but I would just wince every time when I was on Facebook and every so often, I would have a friend or even a family member. It's worse when it was family. When they would say on their profile picture, they would say relationship and then be single or married or even divorced, which is kinda stupid. Like, why would you advertise that? But anyway, like, if you're divorced, just say single. It looks better. But I always winced when the relationship status said it's complicated. It's like, why? Especially if the person was married. Like, why? Why would you broadcast that? Like like, you are so struggling for attention. It's like, not good attention. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I haven't been on Facebook in a long time, and I haven't been on Twitter in, like, I think it's close to 2 years now. Alright. Final Fantasy says, "Vice leads the soul to ruin, virtue leads to honor. Virtue also leads to life." I know it's kinda strong. Whether by Christian faith we believe in eternal life or just life, like gladness of the heart. That's an example of life. I'm reading, in the Old Testament, and it's there were some, there's some hard statements to be had, like, the the Jewish, the Hebrew Jewish, yeah, I think he was a sage, talks about how, uh, like, a a a contentious wife is just rot to the bones. It's like you would rather have, like, a small portion of food every day in a house of peace than living in a luxury with a contentious woman, and it's true. Like, I would hope never to be contentious. I mean, it goes both ways, but oof. Like, if you ever guys, if you ever need a good villainess, you have to be like, a good villainess is a master manipulator and someone who really, like, wears on you psychologically. That's a good villainess. Alright. Deep Hensack, welcome. Well, I had welcomed you before. You say you got an excellent topic with fascinating tangents abound tonight. Thank you. Well, thank you. I always, especially with my impromptu, when I don't really have when I have an idea of what to talk about, I always want to make sure I make sense. Jung says you can have a complex character that is objectively good. Yeah, people disregard a person's struggle to do the right thing, which is why they say no complexity in their eyes. Yeah, I mean the objective, or like the good character will have conflict. The complexity is in the conflict, whether it's within the character, like an internal conflict, or an external thing. Just because just because a character is someone like Captain America doesn't mean they won't go through a lot of ordeals, a lot of questions and stuff like that. Final Fantasy says, "I've done 5 good things, so I'm gonna do 5 bad things to balance it out." No, stupid, you're a human being, not a robot. That's how people are thinking. Like this is kinda my oh, hello, Samuel Proctor, good to see you. This is my, gripe with people not understanding the Force, like, people do think the balance of the Force is, like, it's the equal amount of good side and bad side. It's like, no, the balance of the Force is maintaining the innate essence of the Force, which is a force of good. The manipulation of the Force to pursue bad things, that's the imbalance. So it's like, yeah, balance is not like, "Okay, I need half my circle blue and half my circle red. Now we have balance." It's so I teach 4-year-olds who have a better concept of things than some people I see in the comments section. Not you guys, but people who are like, "Ah!" Like, yeah. Brian Gilmartin says, "The more I think about how people reject pure good heroes, the more I think about think that it's an offshoot of the quote, "Don't judge me, bro" attitude of earlier generations. Well, it is that, but it's also more than that. People have a real hard time with having standards of excellence as a human being, like having a code of honor. It could be in the form of loyalty. It could be the form of selflessness. People have a hard time seeing morally upright people elsewhere. They want to bring the heroes down so they feel good about themselves. Uh, I I personally would not want that. Like that's I mean that's why in the Christian faith we have Christ Jesus, who is the epitome of all things good that we aspire to be as Christians. If you don't have a religion but you want to be morally good, look at figures in fiction and think, "Oh man, I could really be like that." Or I want to be like that. Like this total antipathy toward striving to be better. Like, what is so wrong about wanting to be a better person? What's so wrong to want to be good? It's like, well, don't knock the don't knock the dark characters either, Sound Engraver. I'm like, I'm not, but you're more knocking me for pursuing good more than I'm like knocking like the morally gray characters. Like I never talk about well, besides the sci-fi fiction that I was reading, The Red Rising, like, apart from that, I've not really ever talked about well, no, that's not true. With Star Wars, I have, but I rarely talk about, like, the actual objective purity of a hero. Professor Geek has talked about that leagues more because that's his topic. That's his, scholarly heroes and stuff. I'm only talking about it more because he and I are watching a lot more quality content. I love Stargate, and I love it when the characters do good things. I'm so an aside. I think tomorrow I should be getting Alpha Core. So I decided I wanted to purchase Alpha Core. I had seen that it was like, oh, 2 more days until the campaign ends. I'm like, oh man, already. And I'm like, Alpha Core from the Rippaverse is is a story that looked interesting enough to buy. I unless Yaira, uh, the female superhuman in the universe, unless she has a part that looks really interesting in relation to Alpha Core, yeah, maybe I would pick up that book too. I to be honest, I wasn't really interested in Isom, the story of Isom, but like Alpha Core, that setup looks interesting, and it's Chuck Dixon, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get Alpha Core. But I didn't want Alpha Core to be my first comic to read. So I'm reading Superman for all seasons now. I'll finish it tonight or tomorrow. It's a fairly short read, and then I want to read Batman: The Long Halloween. So I wanted those to be the first comic book stories before reading Alpha Core. But anyway, why did I talk about that? I can't remember. There was a reason. Oh, but like, my husband we are invested in those types of stories. It's like, it could be sci-fi. I mean, believe me, I need my dose of good characters because I read science fiction. And science fiction is just it's full of angry protagonists, it's full of people struggling with morals and stuff like that. It's downright some characters are downright annoying or cartoonish. That's science fiction, so I have to be centered with something like Stargate, or a comic book or something like that, or a game, like a game with a good protagonist or whatever. Anyway, speaking of which, Mario RPG Remake is good. It's good. I'll do a review maybe a couple months down when I have some playthrough um, footage, for my commentary. But if you guys love the original game, the original Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, the remake is really good. I have like one or two little gripes with it, but other than that, it's a very nice play. I'm almost at Smithy. in fact, I'll probably get to Smithy tonight. Wonderful. I highly recommend. It does not deviate from the source material. It's just it looks really nice. It's the spirit of the game. I like it. I like the old. I'm gonna go back and forth between the original and this game. Let's see. All right. Oh, Stunning and Brave Megatron, welcome. Oh, you were streaming with a friend. Drew the Squirrel Green Lantern. Uh, sorry, I said that word wrong. Lantern Chip? Oh, you were talking to Brian Gilmartin. Sorry. Forget what I said. Andreas Hernandez. Good to see you. Ani Kado. Complicated equals underlying unresolved issues that are hard to put a finger on. Better be solved though, especially in a story. I love things that are okay. I like things that are unresolved for a time. Um, the last book that I read from the Foundation series, there were one or two issues that were not resolved by the end of Foundation and Earth, and I had heard, I think it was Lynn Green that brought it up. Asimov was planning on writing a conclusion to that, the 3-book trilogy, the sequel trilogy, and he unfortunately passed before he could. So chances are it was going to be resolved in that second or in that third book. Man, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, having it having something that is hard to put a finger on is not totally bad per se. But yeah. Spidey Rule says making a terrorist the hero of the story. Is that what she is? That's not surprising. Sounds like the redhead and the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah, I never watched that, but I think Critical Drinker did a. I don't really watch his channel much, but when I had, I was watching his essays on that, and yeah, that's so strange. Like it's so weird that like people are trying to make a really bad character sympathetic. Like when I say bad character, I mean you want to blow people up, and they're saying, well, we got to make her sympathetic, or we got to make him sympathetic because it's complicated. You know, she's had a checkered past, and she's had abuse. I'm like, that's fine, but there are a lot of good, morally upright people who've had abusive pasts, and they overcame it. It's like, ugh. It's like, it's okay that she's bad because she had a bad past or whatever. It's as if saying, "No, she's bad for doing the wrong she's done even with her past." It's like saying, "Well, you can't validate her past. You can't validate the mean people that abused her." I'm like, I never validated. I never condoned abuse by saying that she shouldn't blow people up. Oh, the logic. Samuel Proctor says, you have a friend that just refers that show as The Falcon and the Snowman. Yeah, I don't yeah. I can see that, I guess. But, man, that's like over a year ago now. Yeah, Junk says, it's complicated means I want drama. That's the thing is you could have drama. You can have drama, it's just it has to be well done. I told you guys on my last stream, the last book of the Asimov Foundation series, Foundation and Earth it was drama that was not necessary. It's just like, don't have unnecessary drama, have good drama. See, drama can be done really well. You never wanna, like, pigeonhole I'm not saying you guys are doing that, but you never wanna pigeonhole the word drama with something like melodrama or something over the top melodramatic, because drama should be a part of fiction. It's just gotta be good. It's just gotta be well written. Andreas says, you can argue Bo-Katan. I should say Bo-Katan. Is that her right name? I don't know. I just say Bo-Katan. I'm used to saying that. That's probably bad. You can argue that Bo-Katan turned good because she realized Darth Maul was the actual enemy when the other leader of Mandalore died. Her being the next leader of the Mandalorians is another debate. From the little I remember of that show, she was in allegiance with Pre Vizsla, who was gonna assassinate her own sister. She was fine with Satine being assassinated by Pre Vizsla, and then, "Oh, no, Pre Vizsla dies at the hand of Maul," and then, like, "Oh, now you're an enemy." It's like, he looked pretty sus to me when he first was talking with Pre Vizsla, like, she should have had every suspicion. That was from my own memory. It's been, like it's been a long time since I've seen that show, and I probably won't watch it again. It was good while it lasted. Uh, have Hadir? Hey, I wanna say your name correct. Interesting I should say your name correctly. Interesting discussion. Complex equals when you cannot lose any of the harmonious components. Complicated oh, yeah, complex is that. Complicated, something is still missing in the cacophony. That's a good way of, assessing that, I would say. Yeah, there is room for cacophony in music. Um, could be totally literal, like in, something to be used in a film soundtrack or something like that. Or cacophony in a programmatic way, dealing with, maybe a Slavic fairy tale, you know? So, there is room for cacophony. There's room for it to put it in a well, there goes my ring. There's room to, put it in a, programmatic way. When I say programmatic, in something that is musically illustrating another idea. Feminution says, "Great point about Bo-Katan." Yeah, she knows about Star Wars. She knows about Star Wars. Uh, when it comes Samuel Proctor says, "When it comes to the meaning of the balance of the Force, I blame George for not making it clear." I would say yes, I wish he made it clear, for not making it clear what it means ever since he introduced the idea of balance in the Force in the prequels. Yeah, I mean, that could've yeah, and then Filoni goes into the whole Mortis gods, and then there's if you remember, like, Anakin taming the brother and the sister in front of the father or whatever, and, like, there's a literal yin yang black and white symbol. I was like, "That's not the balance of the Force. That's not what it means. Not what it means." Basically, like, okay, I know I just said it, but I'm gonna say it again, and you don't even have to use the Force. Let's say like taking any essence of a thing that makes it that thing, and then using the essence to manipulate it to pull away from its original meaning. That's basically imbalance, you know? I've been I this is kind of I probably shouldn't even say this out loud, but I've been debating for my science fiction, um, the idea of teleportation or, even, yeah, well, I'm not gonna use teleportation. I can't see myself using teleportation at all in my science fiction. But even something like that where the human body can't take such distant travel that atoms are completely pulled apart, and then you're reconstructed as you were. And I feel theologically speaking, I feel a little weird about that because the body and the soul is a very important religious thing. And, I feel a little weird about like having a character, having a protagonist undergo that because of extensive instantaneous travel. Are they the same person? I don't know. I'm kind of wrestling with that. We don't know. Solomon Kane is objectively a good man who also contains multitudes. Oh, Samuel Lee, nice to see you. People have so little imagination when it comes to writing heroes that everything has to be muddled with gray. Solomon Kane probably is he's probably a good example. In fact, I probably need to read more of that short fiction involving Solomon Kane because he's upright, even religiously speaking. From the one story I listened to. Um, and I can't remember the title. Something to do with skulls. You guys would know if you're a Solomon Kane fan. But there's punishment and it's dark. Like it's dark content. And I feel like I can listen to dark content or I can read dark content if there is a religious notion behind it. Like if there's a contrast Like if there's something good that wards off the darkness. If there's good that fights the darkness, I think I can handle a little bit, just the tiniest bit of darkness. But don't ask me to watch a horror film, even with that, because I won't. Uh, Megatron says, "Cause it's cause good is hard, and people don't want to work hard anymore." AI artist. I would even just say artists. Like people, like it takes time. It takes years to be good at what you do. It takes years, and some people just don't want to make that trek, and that's okay. But they get mad at other people for making that trek sometimes. Megatron says, "I've only seen EVS's review of iPhone 1 and 2, and was extremely underwhelmed for what I saw in the art and story." Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen any. Have I seen reviews of it? I think the only one review I saw of it was a few months back with Literature Devil. Um, and he actually had a really good take on it. Yeah, it was just and it wasn't anything of Eric July and his writing or whatever. It was just a level of interest. And I will say this, guys. Um, I've been slowly picking up, like, I've been writing down things I want to read and write. And I realized this about myself just recently, and I had to tell Prof about this. 7 o'clock. Okay, we'll try to keep going with the stream. Um, but if the idea is interesting enough, I will read it or watch it no matter the medium. So let's say it's even let's say it's even an anime film, guys. If the story is very interesting, like if the setup is interesting, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a really interesting premise. I will watch it or I will read it regardless of the medium. That is not to say if I somehow review a good work of art and it has to be anime or whatever, that gives the people no license to make all these anime recommendations. I didn't read it or watch it because of that genre or that medium per se. I read it because I was interested in the story. It's the same way with comic books or graphic novels. If people say, "Oh, you're starting to read graphic novels," like if I do an Alpha Core review or something, like, "Oh, you need to read this. You need to read this graphic novel. You need to read this comic book. You need to read this." I'm like, no, 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 no. Like I'm going to read it only if the story piques my interest. And so I don't feel any pressure to read anything else of the Rippaverse, even if I like Alpha Core. And I think that's his intention too. Like he's bringing on so many writers and stuff like that. Like I think there's gonna be like it's gonna be like a gelato station, like with different flavors and stuff. So I might not like Alpha Core. Maybe it's just not for me. I'll say as much if, once I finish it. But that's just something it's not the medium. Well, I do like reading novels. I do like reading novels, but it's not the medium. It is if the story piques my interest, if the setup is good, and if it's well executed based on that visual medium, based on that movie, based on that novel. So just something. This is something I learned about myself. I'm like, I don't think I'd be interested, and I am. All right, let's move along down because it is 7 o'clock. Um, Craig W says, "I'm betting Prof let you know this, but you might want to read Batman Year One before Long Halloween because Sale and Loeb said the story in that Miller. Oh, I don't even know how to pronounce that name. Mazzucchelli story. I don't know. I do trust. The thing is, I first of all, I trust my husband, especially when it comes to those kind of comic book stories. The second thing is, I've been really interested in reading The Long Halloween for a long time. Like, I wanted to actually read it this Halloween, but I was just too busy with the wedding. So, yeah. But thank you. Thank you for the recommendation. Ghost Planet says, teleportation leads to the fly. I never saw that film. I don't plan on watching that film. I'm sure it's good science fiction horror, but no, thank you. But thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. RJ was talking about that too. He's like, I like when people say, Scotty beam me up from Star Trek. It's like you're basically, theologically speaking, you're a different person. And so, like, do I want to put that? Do I want to put that in the premise of my sci-fi works, or should I just say, it's just a sci-fi trope you just can get used to or whatever. I haven't decided yet. I really haven't decided. So I'll let you know when I do. Um, uh, Spider Rule says, Junk and I were talking about Facebook profiles when we talked about the phrase "it's complicated." Yeah, yeah, like you know what those people are. You know what they're like. It's like, yeah, exactly. Did you hear the ring drop? It dropped on my mic stand. Yeah. You dropped your ring like Fan Man did at the wedding. Yeah, great times. That ring fell so hard on the floor too. It was so funny. And it could not happen to anyone else. Like Fan Man was perfect for that. Like I am so glad that happened. I'm so glad that happened. No one's gonna remember the wedding as much as they remember that. Hey, Fan Man, remember like you dropped that mic like you dropped my ring. Uh, Andreas Hernandez says, Superman Secret Origin is the best origin story for Superman. It also introduces the basic Superman lore. Yeah, I will start reading a lot more Superman and a lot more Batman. That's good that okay, Craig W says is Long Halloween is definitely a standalone. That's good. Um, good. Good. Year one, you say just makes Long Halloween a tad richer if you're someone who likes the continuity stuff like that. Cool, good. Oh, coffee, welcome. I almost missed you. Hey, Sound Giver in chat, gonna work on my snow zen garden while I listen. Those Japanese gardens, they're really pretty. Well, thank you. Hopefully, I'm very therapeutic. I don't think I was that therapeutic today on my stream. Yeah. So anyway, Andreas Hernandez has something about Clone Wars. You don't remember much from the Filoni Clone Wars, but Filoni might be responsible for making light and dark side a yin and yang thing. Disney might also try to conceptualize this too. Yeah, unfortunately. Unfortunately. I mean, so if you want a good novel out of the EU that really explains the Force so well is Darth Plagueis. I'm gonna read another EU book soon. I want to read 2 graphic novels or 2 comics actually. I think they're comics before, but it's gonna involve the Old Republic. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say. I think that was good. We just made it at the 90-minute mark. I did want to talk about Bebop, welcome. Good to see you. Why not do what they did in Galaxy Quest in substitution for teleportation? I will look that up. Yeah, there's got to be a way I can circumvent that. There's got to be a way. People say, "Well, it's your art. Like you can do whatever you want." I'm like, yeah, but maybe there should be a theological construct in there that really preserves the body. I read recently a short story that was actually pretty good. His other short stories were they're okay. Gordon Dickinson, and it was called The Jackal's Meal. And it was basically this alien that really thought they were superior to humans. And they undermined the human being. They undermined the race of men for one little piece of criteria. And that was men, unlike this race of aliens, men preserved the sanctity and the sacredness of the human body. They preserving the sanctity of the human shape, male or female, it didn't matter. And this alien race, for their own amusement, would carve and surgically change, brutally change any being, not just human beings, but any being, and they couldn't make negotiations with the human race after that because they assumed, well, the human beings don't care as long as it looks like a human being. That's cool. But no, it actually not only had to look like a human being, you have to be a human being. Like, so it's pretty interesting. And so like the idea of body and soul, I think is really really important, especially when you like transfer, like those movies like transfer consciousness into a machine or into a new body or something like that. There's circumstances. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. Um, Spider Rule says, I say, if it interests me, I'll watch it. So does this mean you'll watch an Ernest movie? I mean, okay, I'm gonna say this, guys. Total confession. Total sound engraver moment. This is for my husband over on the other side. I will say Ernest Saves Christmas is a wonderfully structured film. It's actually a very good structure, very good pace, very good writing, very good characters, very good acting. It's a very good Christmas film. Can't deny it. It's not a bad film. It's actually a good film. It's actually really well done. So if you have to watch an Ernest film, watch that film. I did not like Ernest Scared Stupid. I still haven't seen the other Ernest films. Maybe I'll like them too. And he's good. Like even Barney in Ernest Scared Stupid. He's funny. Okay, there's no question. He's funny. The setup I didn't really care for myself. Just reminded me of just old Disney films that were kind of like B-rated Disney films. It's supposed to be B-rated because it's Ernest and stuff like that. And he's funny. Like I'm not going to deny that, but we'll see. If I watch another Ernest film and I think it's a good film, then I'll let you guys know. All right. I did want to say one thing though before I yes. Yeah. Next up, Ernest Goes to Jail. Yeah, that'll probably be the next summer film that I'll watch. Bebop says they basically get coated in a transparent fluid protective shell and shoot off a rocketed platform into a nearby wormhole and then land on the targeted spot at the next destination. And I've seen that done in science fiction, like even reading science fiction. I've seen it at the extreme where it's good, and then I've seen it at the extreme where it's bad. So we'll see. I haven't decided. Teleportation doesn't necessarily, this is Spidey Rule saying, have to be the molecule scrambling kind. You can make it work in a similar fashion to portals or black holes where your entire body goes through it. Yeah, kind of like with Stargate a little bit. Yeah, like that's the thing is I don't have any gripes with the whole Stargate procedure. Like it's magic, it's energy. They're the same characters that go back and forth between planets and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll see. I'll definitely see. But I actually did generate a conflict with a spaceship character actually with it. So we'll see. But I'm not gonna say anything. I love this character. Oh, love this character. Anyway, so what I want to say before I wrap it up real quick, yeah, we're just at the 90-minute mark. Going forward with my Sound Engraver channel, obviously we're continuing with the weekly live streams every Sunday. You guys, it's been a great turnout. You guys seem to be interested in talking about art and stuff, which is great. Kind of talking about what not to do with art too. And I wanted to try this year out with posting two types of videos outside the live stream. My SuperCollider / Logic Pro / other kind of music videos that are more educational, like some good tips to have with SuperCollider, Logic Pro, and other music software and stuff like that. Things that people would look up for educational purposes. So that was one type. And then another type where I was speaking with my phone. I will say I love those type of videos. I like making those type of videos, but and this is just me being honest, guys, they just don't get the views worth the work because a lot of recording and editing goes into those commentary videos, and I like it. I love the audio. I love the look of it. I'm much clearer on my phone than I am here on StreamYard and stuff like that. I up the audio so it's even more I would say clearer than what you would hear here. I love it, but it's just not. I've noticed it's not a thing people are really interested in. And so I'm going to continue with the SuperCollider videos because that's just making music. SuperCollider videos and Logic Pro videos are more my evergreen videos. So evergreen, it's kind of an entrepreneurial word. It's basically it's videos that keep getting views, like no matter how old they are. And that's important to me because SuperCollider is important to me. Logic Pro is important to me. So those will continue weekly. But as far as commentary outside the live streams, I'm only going to do that maybe once a month. And it would be something like a review. Like, okay, I'm going to review the Red Rising book, the first book, because there are some problems with it. And it's a very famous book. So I'm going to get a lot of pushback, and it's going to be great. Then I would review science fiction because I love science fiction. I would review things I've been reading. I might do another review of the Foundation series. Maybe not. Maybe until I read all the series. I don't know. But reviews, science fiction, something to do with writing and science fiction and stories. So things like the good fiction that I am reading, because I tell you, I'm not reading bad fiction on purpose. I just happen to read bad fiction. Like, oh, that wasn't that good. But I'm reading a lot of good fiction too. And so I think that will be more like a once a month going forward. I still have a few videos that are going to come out next week, just because I have them posted. But I'm not expecting a lot of views. And thank you guys for listening to me when you do come on. But those will probably be maybe a once a month thing. I was hoping it'd be a weekly thing, but it's just not worth the work. The work that I put into those videos, I enjoyed for the time being. I love crafting my videos like that. But when something takes time, especially as an artist, you think, okay, those 4 hours I spent on this video, I could have composed, or I could have finished my short story. So when you're an artist, personally for me, I am not a YouTuber. I think to put my time in my art, my music, and my writing. I love YouTube, but YouTube is a pastime. Like I accept that. YouTube is a pastime. And so that's what it's going to be. So going forward into this end of the month, next month, it'll be more SuperCollider videos. Probably into the next month, a review. Probably not more than one a month. So that's what I had to say. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, I'll always be streaming. At the very least, I'll always be streaming. So thank you guys so much for your Studio Super. I think sorry. See, I need to check my starred messages with the super chats because I almost missed your super chat. Let me post this up. The Nickelodeon. See, I have to say this. So, the Nickelodeon show El Tigre. I don't know how to pronounce Spanish. Does the concept? Oh, you say Echo tried to do so much better, raised by his dad, who's a superhero, and his uncle, who's a supervillain. Yeah, because isn't her father Kingpin or something like that? So weird. Yeah. Okay. Nickelodeon, man. That's crazy to think about. I didn't know they were still out doing stuff. That's cool. Thank you for the recommendation, Studio Super. Yeah, appreciate that. Anyway. Bebop, thank you for joining. Yeah, I'm really 6 to 7 is my time. 5:30 to 7-ish. Now it's like close to 7:30, so I probably should bounce. But thank you guys so much for watching and for listening. And until I see you next, you keep producing. I'm gonna say that right. You keep producing good art. I have to say it all: producing, preserving, and promoting the good art you love. And I will catch you later. Have a good weekend.